Hello critters, you may have heard, but the rapture is happening this week, September 24th. Here are tips and tricks of what to do to help your rapture go smoothly. Number 1, sign over all of your worldly possessions to me. You won't need them, you're getting raptured up into heaven. I'm helping you be holier because Jesus said to sell all your stuff, so then it guarantees you're gonna get raptured when the time comes. I'm making the sacrifice for you. So you can Venmo me everything in your bank account. You can sign over your house to me. Okay, hello critters, for real. So sorry for that. That was a bit, but it felt a little too close to reality, huh? Cause like all the grifters. Anyways, I'm so qualified to talk about this topic because 1, I'm an ex-evangelical that used to believe rapture theology, and 2, I was literally in a cult that used rapture like numerology prophecies to point to their Messiah and like validate him as their Messiah. And I've deconstructed both of those things. This is my time to shine. The people of TikTok and YouTube, and by the people I mean the ChristianTok people of TikTok, have decided that September 24th is the day that the rapture is finally going to happen. And guys, it's for real this time. Never mind the thousands of times that humans have got it wrong before. These TikTokers have the one truth. They got it this time, guys. Trust us. So I just wanted to use this as an opportunity to talk about different types of like biases and manipulation in high control groups. And I want to try to get this out by the rapture day, which is like gives me like a few days to do it. So this is going to be mostly unscripted. I'm going to lock in, but this will be, I'm just human. This might be ramblier than usual, but I'm so hyped. So let's deconstruct these people saying that the rapture is going to happen this week. I'm so excited. I wish they would have given me more of a warning so I could have stopped paying rent earlier. But it is what it is. I mean, we all know that Christian TikTokers are the wisest of them all, right? And the most spiritual and closest to God.
I heard the Spirit of the Lord talk to me and say, Taylor Swift is leading people to hell.
So to get started, I want to go over some of the background of like where the concepts of the rapture came from and deconstructing that. Just to paint a picture before we get into the videos we'll be reacting to today. Let's go all the way back to the man himself, Jesus H. Christ. For those of you who don't know who he is, Jesus was a preacher from around 2,000 years ago that many believed was the Messiah. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. I can't keep that bit going. But so you all know who Jesus is. But what you may actually not know is that Jesus was definitely an apocalyptic preacher. So he fully believed the second coming would happen like dang near immediately, like within the apostles' lifetime. If you want more information on this, Bart Ehrman has talked about it a lot. He's a biblical scholar. But I mean, like, guys, read Matthew 24:34. This generation will not pass away until all these things happen. There's a lot of data pointing to him being an apocalyptic preacher. So he wasn't making predictions for like thousands of years in the future, like how we are now. And a lot of people claim that Apostle Paul always taught the rapture because of like Thessalonians when he talks about, you know, people going up into the clouds. But guys, scholars know what Paul was saying, and Paul did not teach the rapture as we know it now. He was making an analogy to a practice they actually did at that time. Dan McClellan actually just made a video about this recently because of this topic coming up. So as usual, check out Dan McClellan for biblical scholarship. But he was referring to a practice at the time where like as the king would return to a city, all the people would gather and like greet him as he came in around the walls of the city and like usher him in. But since, you know, he's in heaven, then they would have to go up. But he wasn't talking about a literal rapture. That this whole idea is a misconception of that story. But even with Jesus's prediction of the second coming happening within the apostles' lifetime, it did not look how our cultural understanding of the rapture is now, where people just like vanish and their clothes are left behind. In the early 1800s, this concept was first formally like laid out, maybe not first, but widely accepted and taught and laid out and popularized by a man named John Nelson Darby. And he belonged to a group that formed like, you know, the way thousands of Christian groups do, where they're like, we're upset with the church because we actually read the Bible the right way, literally. And guys, I need to do some more research on this, so take this part with a grain of salt, but it's really funny. I keep seeing that Darby fell off a horse and hit his head when he came up with this stuff. So, like, factually, he came up with this stuff while he was recovering from falling off a horse. But if he actually hit his head, like, it's just so perfect. Like, guys, this was just a concussion-induced spiritual psychosis, is what it seems like. And there's a chance his ideas were influenced by a woman named Margaret MacDonald, who before him was having, like, trance visions of people being caught up in the air when Jesus returns, but we can't really know that for sure. But let me just say, if you're going to tell me that a man stole a woman's idea and didn't give her credit, I wouldn't be shocked. Anyways, so Darby's ideas that did not originate from the time the Bible was written and just started, popularizing in the 1800s continued to grow throughout the 1900s. And even then, it didn't look like how we view it now. So where did our modern concept of the rapture mostly come from? That's right, the source of many, many childhood traumas, the Left Behind series. The first book came out in 1995, and there were dang 15 more after that. And they were turned into, like, wildly popular movies, and then were remade and starred Nicolas Cage, which, like, interesting. They're garbage movies, but Christians aren't really known for making great art, so it's not really, like, that unusual. They even wrote versions of this book for teenagers. We've got to traumatize everybody, guys. Your parents are going to disappear and leave you behind. This is the perfect way to make well-adjusted, secure adults. So, like, with the topic of, like, the Left Behind ideology, I remember one time when I was at band camp, we had to practice inside because it was raining. The lights flickered while we were inside because, it was raining and storming. And when that happened, one of my fellow teammates, screamed and fell to the ground on her knees and started sobbing because she thought the rapture was happening. That is not a normal, well-adjusted teenage thing to do. She obviously had a lot of fear built up in her nervous system and just lived like that. So, like, I really want to emphasize, lots of people who go through this, like, rapture ideology that's, like, pushed on them as a kid is actually really traumatic. Like, it makes your nervous system feel unsafe and unprotected and in fear, like, chronically, which is, like, a recipe for CPTSD. So I really want to validate, like, if you found the Left Behind, like, rapture ideology traumatic, that's so valid, because, like, that's horrifying. So it's a lot like how the current Christian concepts of hell are mostly informed by one of the world's greatest fan fictions, Dante's Inferno. Most of our concepts of the rapture were actually created by this stupid book series and movie series. I'm thinking maybe one day I'll do a deep dive into these movies in the future, but we'll see. So that's a super brief deconstruction history of the origins of the rapture. So now let's see what's going on over on ChristianTok. So if I understand correctly, this all started with a video from a pastor named Pastor Joshua, where he claims that, Jesus appeared to him in a vision and said that the rapture would happen this year, 2025, with the Feast of Trumpets.
He appeared in front of me and told me on the 23rd and the 24th of the Feast of Trumpets in September 2025, I will come to take my church.
It's ingrained in Christians to not really think critically about what stories are being told to you and what sort of truth they actually hold. Because, think of how Christians view, like, testimonies, where people can just tell their story and you take it as truth and as, confirmation that your religion and their religion are true. You're not really taught to think critically about these stories or ask for proof. There's a whole culture of testimonies within Christianity. Also, things like, preachers are kind of being the mouthpiece of God. You're not really encouraged to question what they're saying because they're speaking on behalf of God. And also just in the Bible, it discourages doubt a lot. So there's this whole programming of discouraging critical thinking within this religion. Because when people share a testimony or a sermon, you don't really ask for proof. And Christians can say, oh, but we're told to, what's the word they always use? It's been so long since I was an evangelical, it feels like I'm forgetting their language. Discernment. They're like, you have to use discernment. But so you can say that, but then, like, the teachings and the behaviors around that, outside of that, encourage you to not think critically about what people are claiming. So that's the first issue I have here is, like, across the board, we're not doubting enough. We're not thinking critically enough and asking questions enough, because that's what the belief system encourages. And like, if you can't do that, you're going to fall into a cult so fast, because that's what happened to me. When I got to college, I was super naive and believed that everybody like had the best intentions when they were interacting with me. So when they would tell me stories and things that happened and things about their leader, I would kind of just believe them, and I didn't ask a lot of questions or like think critically about it. And the other thing that gets me about this, how do we differentiate his claims, like Pastor Joshua's, from other claims that Christians make? What hard, like, testing can we do to know if they're telling the truth or not? So, like, for example, in JMS, the cult that I was in, they had so many testimonies and miraculous stories of amazing things that happened to them once they joined JMS. And Christians, regular Christians of all denominations, have the same stories. The ones in JMS were literally identical and just as miraculous. So how do we test what's actually from God and what's not? And the reality is, you can't, because these stories can't have proof. They're not falsifiable. Falsifiable means you can prove it's wrong. You can't. And that's a problem. There's no hard testing you can do to prove which people claiming things are right and wrong, and which, miraculous experiences are real or not real. You know what this makes me think of? I'm going to tell you a little story about Harold Camping. So Harold Camping predicted the rapture happening. He was an evangelical radio host. He predicted the rapture happening May 21st, 2011. He got this, this number from some serious, like, spiritual mumbo jumbo psychosis numerology, the same way JMS does. So again, this is a pattern with crazy cults. And he did numbers by putting this out there. His radio show went nuts. People donated money like crazy. And he started spending that money like crazy. He started spending that money like the world was ending. People believed him so much that they would sell all of their belongings, like their house and their cars and everything, in preparation for the rapture happening. So May 21st comes and goes, and nothing happens. So then he moves the goalposts, which is what happens always in cults with doomsday prophecies. And he says, the May 21st was the spiritual judgment. October 21st is the actual day. So then when that day came and went, he didn't make any public comments for a minute, and his radio show did confirm they would not be returning all the money that people donated to him. And also, I'm joking about this because that's just how I, cope with religious trauma. But unfortunately, like, tragically, with these doomsday predictions, people do, like, when it doesn't happen, commit suicide. And this happened with Harold Camping's predictions too. A young woman did commit suicide. So there are sincere consequences for this kind of behavior. But my point that I'm getting to is, how can we prove, before we saw that it came and went and didn't happen, that Harold Camping's claims were not as true as Pastor Joshua's or as the JMS cult's predictions? There's no way to falsify these claims. And Christians will try to say, like, this guy has better reasoning, or this way. No. There's no hard, solid way to falsify these things, and we need to, as a society, get better at questioning what we're told, and get better at asking questions and testing things and asking for evidence and looking for the evidence and falsifiable evidence. If you cannot do that, you will land in a cult so fast. And that's how we're in the current state that we're in with Donald Trump. The reality is, when people make these like fantastic claims about, knowing when the world will end, or, these miracles or like visions that happen to them, it's likely just human psychology, law of large numbers. Crazy things happen to me still, even as an atheist, when before, when I was a Christian, I would have attributed that to God. And then when I was in JMS, I attributed those crazy things to being in JMS. But like, really, law of large numbers, millions of things are happening at all times. Crazy shit happens. Like, that's just, wild things happen. Let's go on to the next video, getting more into the reactions to this rapture on TikTok.
So you're telling me that one of God's appointed times is the Feast of Trumpets, and this year it falls on September 23rd and 24th, and it's a feast dedicated to blowing trumpets, And we know that scripture says that at the last trumpet, those in Christ, dead or alive, will be raised to life with new bodies.
So we kind of already addressed the being raised at the trumpet sound things. It's a misunderstanding of a verse from Paul, not what he was saying. He didn't mean a rapture like how we're thinking of it now.
And when you look up 923 in Gematria, it means Feast of Trumpets, and it means Rapture of a Christian.
Guys, Gematria numbers, no. Oh my gosh. Cults love this crap, guys. They love it. They eat it up. QAnon loves this crap. Assigning numbers to letters and like trying to find the hidden meanings. You do not want to be on the same page as QAnon. You know what else has the Gematria number of 923? LeBron James. Is he involved in the rapture? Is he gonna slam dunk on those of us who didn't make it to the rapture as if it wasn't humiliating enough to get left behind? Like, guys, I don't want LeBron James dunking on me. There's so many funny phrases in here that also mean 923. Guys, it pulls up 48 pages of lists of random phrases that add up to 923. With that many phrases, odds are you have a pretty good chance of finding something that fits your narrative. Like I was saying before, cults, just like JMS did, they have a whole like numerology prophecy where they're like this many days and this number means this and blah blah blah. As soon as cults bring out numerology or people making religious claims to bring out the numerology, run. It is a cult, guys. There are so many numbers and letters in the Bible. You could literally make anything fit any narrative you want, and people have done it thousands of times. It is like really not hard. There are so many like time periods and numbers and predictions and cryptic words and blah blah in the Bible. If you are crazy enough, you can make anything work.
And the Feast of Trumpets is laid out in Leviticus 23:24.
This one is confusing to me because, guys, it's laid out in Leviticus because this is a Jewish holiday, and Leviticus is the Old Testament, aka the book that Jewish people also wrote and use. Like, that doesn't mean anything.
And by the way, the word Leviticus has 9 letters in it. By the way, because the Gregorian calendar is different than the Jewish calendar, the beginning of the Feast of Trumpets is the beginning of their 7th month, known as the month of Tishri. And we know also that 7 means completion and is a number used continually throughout the book of Revelation. And by the way, the word Leviticus in Hebrew is Vayikra, which actually has 7 letters.
Leviticus has 9 letters. What does that mean or Matt? Guys, I'm getting worked up. This is a great moment to teach you guys about a cognitive bias and a human tendency called, or a psychological phenomenon called apophenia. This is the human tendency to find meaningful patterns in random or meaningless data that's not actually there. This is because our brains are wired to find patterns, but also be jumpy about the patterns and like see them when they're not actually there, to be overactive in creating patterns. Because the people who were a little bit jumpier about patterns and a little more cautious about when they see patterns, were more likely to survive. If you're, a little more cautious about the patterns and the tiger footprints you're seeing in the forest, or, the similarities in these poison berries, then you're more likely to stay alive. So not only does our brain have like this natural inclination to patterns, which is fucking awesome, we also see patterns that aren't there. Because evolution does not wire perfect beings, it wires beings that stay alive and reproduce. It's very flawed. Okay, girl, it has 9 letters. Okay, what does it matter? If people start trying to say that, like, numbers are significant, like, this number's significant. Let me tell you what they did in JMS. This is a good story. In JMS, they, started out by being like, oh, the number 7 is really significant. Like, it means the unification of heaven and earth. Because number 4 is actually a really significant number because it represents earth. And number 3 is a really significant number because it represents heaven. So that's the unification. And then 6 is actually a really significant number. And actually 316 is a really significant number because that's the day that Christ was born, or that's the day of the second coming of Christ's birthday. And like, eventually, everywhere you go, you see significant numbers because they're all significant and numbers are everywhere. And then you're just reconfirming with yourself that your beliefs are true. So if people try to start telling you like, oh, this is spiritually significant, grain of salt, people. grain of salt. Eventually they want everything, you to see it all the time. That way you're constantly reinforcing your own brainwashing. Also, a lot of numbers appear in the Bible a lot. Guys, you could do this with so many numbers. 40, 4, 3, 7, 6, 6, 6. Like, what does it matter if it's in Revelation a lot? It's in, there's a lot of other numbers in Revelation too. Why are you cherry picking, oh, well, this number that I want to fit is actually what I'm noticing in Revelation? It's just, guys, it means nothing. This is garbledygook. It's just finding patterns where they're not there, because there are lots of numbers throughout the Bible. I could make any pattern I wanted to. I'm getting worked up again.
And you're also telling me that in 2 Chronicles chapter 7, it talks about the completion of Solomon's temple, and it says, on the 23rd day of the 7th month, he sent the people home, rejoicing and with happy hearts for the goodness the Lord had done for David, for Solomon, for his people Israel. So Solomon finished the Lord's temple and the royal palace.
Guys, I'm already really tired. Guys, I can't do this. A random story that happens to have the same numbers that you want to be there? Girl, there are stories throughout the Bible that all have different numbers. You can find a story for whatever number you want. Like, for example, with JMS's prophecy, they would find a bunch of different stories that use 40 days and 4 years and blah, 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 blah. And you can find them because the Bible's big. It has a lot of numbers, okay? You can find the pattern you want to create. We take this girl with the biggest grain of salt.
Speaking of sevens, the 7th astrological sign is the Libra, whose window begins exactly on September 23rd. Keep in mind that this year this is happenstance because Feast of Trumpets does not always land on September 23rd or 24th. And speaking of the Libra constellation, it's the only one out of 12 that is depicted by an object, and the object happens to be scales. And like I said, it's the 7th in the lineup.
I think I'm done actually with this video because we're bringing in astrology. We're bringing one of the most baseless systems ever, guys. We're bringing in astrology into our Christianity. Guys, Christians will claim to hate witchcraft and then do the witchiest shit you've ever seen. Astrology is mostly harmless. I have very little beef with astrology, and I'll often joke about being a Libra or whatever. But using that to make predictions about the end times, girl, we cannot be serious. I need you to be so serious right now. Okay, I can't take this video anymore, actually. We're moving on. We're going to the next video. Your takeaway from that video in particular is that so many people have made end time prophecy predictions using numerology, and they've been wrong thousands of times. And there's a reason that cults love using numerology. It's because they can throw a bunch of numbers at you and you don't have time to debate it all, and it's overwhelming. What is that debate strategy called? Okay, yes. It's called gish galloping. That's all numerology is, guys. I'm so excited to teach you this new term. Learn about gish galloping, learn to recognize it in your life.
So, November last year, God got my attention, changed my life. I left my dream job to come back home to Louisiana. I do not like Louisiana, but I knew that God wanted us to be back here. We've been talking to friends and family since we got back and telling them that the rapture is happening soon. I did not have a date at the time. All I knew was I felt this urgency I've never felt before in my life. I grew up in a Christian home. For over 30 years, I've heard that we were living in the end times and in the last days, and the rapture could happen at any moment. I have never felt urgency until November. Since around February, God was pointing out harvest time to me. I've been pretty much telling people I was expecting the rapture to happen by late summer or early fall. Again, still didn't have a specific date, but that's the time frame that I felt like God was pointing out. When I heard about Joshua's vision, I took it seriously because it was the time frame I was already looking at. I compared it to the Bible. I prayed about it. I prayed for confirmation, and he gave me 3 things immediately within 12 hours. I'm going to recap that in a minute, but there has been so much that I really, really do believe that this is happening next week. But Thursday in the car, I prayed and I asked God, whenever the rapture happens, whether it is next week, next month, next year, can you please just arrange things where I can be home with my family when it happens? Not on the road, not at work, just please let me be home with my family. About 4 hours later, I was fired. A month ago, they gave me 2 extra PTO days because I had been doing such a good job. And I was fired for something that has been going on for over 6 months, but suddenly became a problem now. I wasn't mad about it. Instead of being upset about not having a job, all I felt was peace.
Ma'am, can you turn off the wind tunnel? Oh my, we're in Kansas. So there's this concept we talk about a lot on this channel called spiritual bypassing, where when bad things happen, you know, Christians will say things like, oh, it's in God's plan, or that's what God wanted. So like, for example, we were interviewing this lady at work for a job, a position, and I'm the one who does the interviewing. And she was like, yeah, I failed my my substitute teacher exam today, or parapro teacher exam today. It must have been, I just accepted that it must have been in God's plan. And then the interview was terrible. So like, clearly Christians will experience hard things and then use spiritual bypassing to like make it not about them, or like to excuse it so they don't have to face the hard feelings of things like failure and loss. And it's not really emotionally healthy in the long term. But this is a perfect example of that in real time. When hard things happen, like she said, like, you know, I lost my job, you know, something that had been happening, but it couldn't have been me. You know, it must have been God's plan for me to be able to stay home. And like, I just have a few questions. Like, when you say that you compared Pastor Joshua's, you know, narrative, what did you actually compare? And like, what was so biblical about it that is, you know, more biblical than every other freaking prophecy claim that's ever existed? It's the exact same. And why does God care if you're home with your family if you're just gonna get raptured? Like, I mean, this is also a really good example of humans' like psychological need for narratives, because it's comforting to us. So like, the ancient humans who believed in like a more grand narratives about them and that like have a story of meaning around their life were more likely to fight to survive and to like be psychologically okay. So we need these narratives because it makes us feel like we have some control in a world that we actually have none in. Like, if something hard happens, that's okay, we can explain it with this grand narrative so you continue to function as an organism and not just shut down. And that's exactly what's happening here when Christians have like this grand narrative of like, oh, this is the rapture and one of God's chosen people, I'm gonna get to go to heaven. Like, it's comforting to them. It helps explain away hard things. So yeah, I just thought this video was a really good example of, you know, human psychological need for narratives and spiritual bypassing. So let's go to the next video.
I feel like God just gave me a sign about the rapture. I've just been thinking, you know, like the Feast of Trumpets is going to be broadcast over the whole entire world. And of course, we know all the end time prophecy is coming true, all the dates line up, all the things. And I've been asking God for a sign, because even though I believe wholeheartedly with everything in me that he is going to rapture his church next week, you know, we all want some sort of sign. We all want some sort of confirmation. And I'm watching the show The Chosen, because that's the like pretty much the only thing I watch on TV. I'm going to play this part of the show for you, and I'm going to tell me what you think.
Where I'm going, you cannot follow me now. But afterward, you will follow. After what? When? Let not your hearts be troubled. In my Father's house there are many rooms. I'm going to go get your rooms ready. And then I will come back and take you there. I am the way, and the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
Now, I have watched this show, and particularly that episode, over and over and over. And for whatever reason, that I never really, honestly, I guess maybe it didn't ever click in my head, because I'm always busy. I'll turn the show on and I do a few things and I sit down, right? But that is, it caught my attention. I was making dinner and I heard him say those words. And to me, that was him telling me, giving me some confirmation that he is coming to get us.
So like, you're telling me the sign from God, you know it's a sign from God because you heard vague religious words and ramblings on a religious show that you watch all the time while you were thinking about religious topics. And that's a crazy coincidence? Don't make me tap the sign again, Apophinia. Confirmation bias is really strong in all of this. Because if you're listening to a show about the rapture or about like Jesus and the, you know, him coming, all of the time, of course you're gonna hear that while you're thinking about the second coming and take that as confirmation. It's confirmation bias. This would be like, I don't know if a good analogy, but here's what they would do in JMS. I told you about how like they would do like, oh, you know, you like numbers, all the numbers are significant and they're everywhere, so like you're constantly re-indoctrinating yourself. They would do the same thing with like they would say like nature revelations. So like you would look for things in nature as a sign from God, And so nature's everywhere. So you were constantly getting quote unquote signs that were reinforcing your indoctrination all the time. If you're listening to this Christian show all the time, of course you're gonna hear, you know, something on this topic. And that's not like a miraculous sign or a coincidence. It's called you listen to it all the time. Statistically speaking, if you watch a show all the time about Jesus, you're gonna hear something about Jesus. This one was just so wild to me because I was like, you think that's a sign? You listen to it all the time. It's about the thing. You listen to the thing about the thing you're thinking about all the time. Also, this is a good time to bring up, have you noticed they're using this jargon called a confirmation? This is like kind of like a mini cult inside of like a cult, because this like RaptureTok group of people are all starting to use similar jargon. And I highly encourage you to read the book Cultish by Amanda Montell. It's about like how cults all have like a shared jargon, and it's like part of the control, because like it makes you feel special, it makes you feel part of the in-group, and that's kind of what's happening here. Is like one of them has this experience and this thought in their head, and then another person hears about that thought and experience, and then they go look for that thought and experience, and then they start sharing language, and like I just thought that the shared language of confirmation within this like little mini online group is really interesting. And it's a form of loaded language. So like when you take regular words and imbue them with like a huge supernatural meaning in this case being like a sign or direct word from God, then like that language holds more psychological power over people. And that's what, you know, they're doing here with their language.
I feel like it's time for me to step away from TikTok. I have been so blessed by this, and the Lord has done so much, and I'm so grateful to have been his vessel. And you guys already know, I truly believe with all my heart we will be raptured during Feast of Trumpets this year. It's bittersweet because I know we're going home, but it's just been such a blessing being able to do this and to see what the Lord has done and allowed me to be a part of.
So this lady's been talking about, you know, the Feast of Trumpets rapture a lot on her page, and I just found this video interesting because she was like, I'm so thankful, you know, that God used me as his vessel. So a few things here. I feel like some people took the message of Ratatouille a little too seriously, where it's like, not anyone can be a great cook, but a great cook can come from anywhere. Yeah, girl, you suburban white mom from like, I don't know where she's from, like Minnesota or something. God chose you as his messenger for the rapture, and his, you know, method of delivering the message is this app called TikTok. It's like religion often feels this like main character syndrome that religious people have, and we all got it a little bit. We're human, right? It goes back to what I was talking about. Humans have this psychological need to feel special, because if you did, then you were more likely to fight to survive or like be motivated to keep functioning when hard things happen. And this is just like a normal bias our brain has. We're the center of our own universes. But like Christians can then like imbue themselves with the authority of God and believe they're messengers of God. Being the main character is like a cognitive shortcut to having a positive self-image, which then like with like a heroic narrative and like overcoming and being special, and that just makes it easier to get through life. And I get it, but like ability to imbue your own thoughts and beliefs and actions with God's authority is like so scary to me. It's we talk about a lot on this channel how I'll never get over this. Christians think, because they don't understand how thoughts work, they think that you're in control of all your thoughts because of teachings like thought sense. But we know in psychology that thoughts, you don't control them all, like they kind of happen and you observe them. So they don't know that. So then when like a thought happens like noticeably spontaneously, or how they perceive it as spontaneous, they think it's not them, they think it's God. So then all the time they think God is speaking to them. This lady thinks that God was speaking to her and choosing her. Guys, I'm gonna be real. We've probably accidentally normalized spiritual psychosis in Christians a little too much. And by little, I mean a lot. Because imagine any other like cultic group. Like if this lady was a part of Heaven's Gate, you know, like, or it was saying the exact same things, we would think she's crazy and like needs help. but because it's Christian, we view it as okay. So yeah, I just thought this one was interesting of how like Christianity really fuels main character syndrome and fulfills that psychological need of being special and like a chosen hero. She's just like, she really thinks that she's speaking to people and God chose her to spread his message through TikTok, guys. We've lost the plot. We need to get a grip. All right. So then there's this girl with the slideshow of signs that the rapture is near. Wars and rumors of war. I'm sorry. I'm going to be giggling when I talk about this one because, guys, she's delivering this, like, signs of the end of the world with, like, glam selfies. So, wars and rumors of wars. I don't know if you guys have ever studied or, like, been in a history class, but wars are deeply human. We have cave paintings when we were unga-bungaing around and, like, couldn't even, you know, write words of wars happening. We have cave paintings depicting it. Like, war has been a part of the human experience as long as there have been humans. We have had so many wars. And you know what? Technically, this is the least conflict we've had. Like, I don't want to downplay any conflict. Obviously, there's a genocide happening in Palestine, whatever. But, like, across the globe, this is some of the least amount of war there's ever been. Which is, like, really funny that, yeah, like, there have always been wars. And this is why people have thought that the end times were happening since we've had a conception of end times. Moral decay everywhere. I also find this one really interesting considering, like, technically there's never been a safer time to be a human. Like, if we look at the grand scheme of human history, like, don't think within the last, like, decades, think thousands and thousands of years. Technically there's never been a better time to, like, be alive. And, like, our morals are a lot better. Like, so what are we talking about moral decay? By what definition? Like, your weird freak definition of moral decay. Strange weather and disasters. I actually believe this one. I can't stop giggling at the glam selfies with the words strange weather and disasters with the tornado emoji, guys. The Paul from the Bible would have a stroke looking at these. Oh, well, we've fallen. Actually agree with this one because climate change, but it's not a sign of the end times, it's a sign of us. Gospel reaching the world, okay? So, like, was, like, the Spanish Inquisition a sign of, you know, the end times because we were spreading the word through force? Like, was, like, us forcing the natives to convert or die? Was that a sign of, is that good? A sign of the end times? And people ignoring God. Girl, in what world? So many humans are still religious. What are we talking about? So, like, all of these signs that she's listing, and they're from the Bible, are always happening, have always happened. There's never been a time where there weren't natural disasters, there weren't wars, there weren't diseases. Like, you can apply this to any time. Think critically when people tell you that there are signs the world is ending. These signs have always been around, like, since we wrote these words down. That's like saying, you know, the end times, the sign of the end times is that the sky is blue. And while we're like, this is a good time to talk about how end times theology is actually really harmful for humans as a whole, because it makes suffering okay in their eyes. In their eyes, for their Messiah to come, and for the thing they want to happen, which would be the rapture to happen, the world has to be shit. They're okay with things sucking. They're okay with, you know, fascism taking over, us destroying the planet. They're okay with climate change, you know, going to kill millions of people, because this shit has to happen in order for their beloved Messiah to come back and get them. They're never gonna fix anything. They want things to be bad. That's what I like. If you take away anything, is remember that conservatives' doomsday ideology serves making the world a worse place.